Animation is a motion picture consisting of a sequence of drawings, each slightly different, so that when filmed and run through a projector, the figures seem to move. Now, for many, animation just seems like it's centered around an age demographic of ages 5 to 12 years old, but shockingly enough, the average age range for animation viewership is between 18 to 24 years old. Now, there could be many reasons for that, as it could just be for nostalgic reasons, or maybe it's because animation is more than just a children's sort of genre. Back in 2022, during an Academy Awards ceremony, the Best Animated Feature category was presented. The presenter said that kids watch the animated films over and over again, and that it is a format to kids. Now, yes, that's basically what the general statement you will hear from people. Animation is just for kids. And yes, there have been many animated films that are literally just for kids. But something really bothered me with how the presenters presented animation, because really think about this one little statement. Animated films are just for kids. As someone who has been watching animation since he was a kid, I have valued the genre as a whole for many years. I could even say it's my favorite genre of film over comedy and horror. Now, while I do love both those genres, animation for some reason has really connected with me more than both of those genres. But this brings me back to why this statement bothered me. The 5 films that were nominated that year were the following: Encanto, Flea, Luca, Raya and the Last Dragon, and Mitchell's vs. the Machines. You know what all 5 of these films have in common? None of them should be just for kids type of animated films. On paper, Luca seems like a just for kids animated film, but its deep message about self-acceptance and embracing differences is very mature for a children's film. Then there is Mitchell's vs. the Machines, and well, that film too on paper could be a just for kids type of film, but it has a deep message of the importance of human connection and respecting the differences in others. Now that too is pretty mature for a children's animated film. Surely Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon won't feature a mature deep message too. Learning to trust and forgive, but also the power of letting go of your past. Yeah, no, that one isn't mature as the other two, but it's pretty mature for an age demographic between 5 to 12 years old. Then there is Flea, and this one literally is for the adults. It's a film about a refugee from Afghanistan who comes to America to escape the dangers in his country. Yeah, let's remember that the presenter said that these films were watched by kids over and over again. How much do you want to bet that no child watched that film? Because not only is it an adult animated film, but it's also PG-13 documentary about a person who went through a dark time in his life as a refugee. Clearly that film is just for kids. But then we have our eventual winner for Best Animated Feature, Encanto. A film that, yes, for children, it was. And many songs were sung by elementary schools. I would know, I heard them firsthand. But it won the award. But once again, the film had a very deep message. This film's message is self-acceptance, the impact of family expectations, but also generational trauma. The film literally speaks about how much the main character, Mirabel, struggles to be a part of the family, as everyone in her family has something special about them. That is literally a deep message that children may understand, but ultimately more young adults would understand. As imagine a child caring about being accepted for who they are in an elementary age range compared to young adults who struggle to be accepted in their own homes just because they are different. Now you may be wondering why I took my time to explain what all 5 of these films have in common. It's pretty clear that they all have a deep message that is more mature than what their age demographic is centered around. Hence why I believe the just for kids statement really annoyed me in this awards ceremony. But this now leads me to my main focus in this long rant. Is animated films just for kids? But also, why is animated films respected less as mature films? In this long rant, I will be taking a deep dive in the animated film genre and give it the benefit of the doubt, but also the respect it truly deserves. I will be bringing up the Academy Awards a lot as it is the biggest award to win for films next to the BAFTA and Golden Globes, but I will also be bringing up how animation hasn't been fully respected well in the awards ceremony. But before we talk about the now, we must talk about the beginning. Animation found its first general audiences back in the 1800s with the creation of the stroboscopic disc. This disc was used to show images one by one in a quick succession, giving off an illusion that the image you are seeing is moving. The flipbook in 1868 is another true calling for moving images, as well as it did the exact same thing but in a more sophisticated way. Moving images with paper and our own hands. This actually would be a big part into how animation was created, as animation is moving pictures that we draw, and at one point the method of a flipbook was how these cartoons that animators created moved. It wasn't until 1906 for when animation would hit the big screens. The early 1900s was when animation and cartoons were born, as cell animation was invented, and our first memorable animated character, Felix the Cat, was created. But it was in 1928 where animation and anime films were about to get its highest peak. As one man created a character so memorable, he became the poster boy for $1 billion company. And what better character can be more memorable and successful than Felix the Cat? Well, how about a mouse? While there were other huge animators that started the impact, like Winsor McKay and his 1914 film Gertie the Dinosaur, it was in the 1920s where a certain animator began his long success with animation, and his name was Walter Elias Disney. Walt Disney was an animator who worked on the Slide Company, and he would create cutout animated commercials. That's where he got his start. But he knew that he could do more because he knew he had the potential. He started to experiment with draw animation techniques and found a calling. He even began working with two huge animators at the time, U.B. Urix and Hugh Harman, among other animators, and they would create a series of 7-minute fairy cartoons. But this would then lead to Walt to create a full-on character, Oswald the Rabbit. You guys are probably hoping for a certain other character. We're getting to him. However, he would lose his original idea to Charles Mintz and had come up with something that he would make his own. This is the part where we talk about the mouse. So I hope you're ready for it. With the help from Urix, he created a mouse character that would later be the Disney company's mascot. And his name, oh boy, was Mickey Mouse! Oh boy! Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse became the forefront of the animation industry and were the pioneers of animated films. Steamboat Willie was the first short animated film Disney created that found its huge success. From there, it became obvious that Walt had a future with the genre, so he then helped create the very first full-length animated film. After the success of Steamboat Willie, Disney created many Mickey Mouse animated short films that would introduce us to other characters, including Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, and Pluto, as these characters would become the faces of the Disney company next to their highly profiled mascot Mickey Mouse. But Walt wanted to create a full-length feature film, as he believed it would be more profitable to make the full-length movie rather than continue to work on shorts. Bambi, Gulliver's Travels, and even the Odyssey and the Iliad were all ideas brought up to Disney for the full-length feature film. But Disney wanted to do something else. While Bambi would later become a Disney animated film in 1942, a different film was still being decided by Disney. He then decided to make an animated film on the Brothers Grimm's tale, Snow White. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was born, and Disney knew then and there he had himself a hit, as not only was this the very first full-length feature animated film, this was Walt's first of many full-length films for the Walt Disney Company. It was a huge success for the company, but also for film as well. It has made $8 million in its first release and became the highest grossing film of 1938. Since then, it has gained over $400 million, and to this day, it continues to be the impactful animated film. As without it, we wouldn't see the medium of the genre be around today, or at least be as impactful as it is today. That actually sounds a lot better. Let's get back to it. Its impact in box office and as a whole can't be said without its big accomplishment, being nominated for an Academy Award. It was nominated for Best Original Score, thus becoming the first animated feature film to be nominated for an Academy Award. From there, Walt Disney's success would skyrocket, as he would later come out with more impactful animated features, like Pinocchio, Bambi, and Dumbo. The beginnings of animated films were all centered around this man, as without him, animated films as a whole would probably have never existed, until far later in time. But he wasn't just making animated films just for kids. He was making them as an art form. And even back then, they weren't kid-friendly. After all, 20 minutes into Snow White, we have a bounty hunter going after her, trying to kill her. In Pinocchio, they literally have so many mature moments, including children smoking and drinking beer. And well, Bambi, well, you know, the death of a parent is very mature for a child early on. So to include that in an animated film at that time is pretty intense, to say the least. But again, it's just for kids. Even in the early years of animated films, they had mature moments and deep messages hidden in them. I don't think Walt made these films for just children either, but more for families. They have something for everyone in them. But it also takes us to my next focus. Animated films that have something for everyone. Now, before I can mention the films of animation, I need to go back to the short film era, as well as while Disney was creating full-length films, another studio was creating short films that were more than just family-friendly. Back in the 1930s, Warner Brothers began creating animated short films that would create some of the most beloved animated characters of all time. The Looney Tunes. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, Sylvester the Cat, Elmer Fudd, Wile E. Coyote, the Roadrunner, Yosemite Sam, there's so many of them. But all of them will become huge stars in the animated world, as they weren't like Mickey and the Gang, but more violent and mature. They were the first few animated characters to be violent at the time, including using guns, knives, TNT, axes, and of course, adding in so much violence with anything they could get their little hands on. But let's not forget the addition of smoking cigars, drinking alcohol, and having some sexual innuendo moments in the shorts. The Looney Tunes were mature animation before we got adult animation. But they weren't centered mainly for adults. They were centered for families. Family-friendly animation is usually a mixture of both for kids and adults, as it has something for both generations. After Looney Tunes, other family-friendly animated shorts would begin to appear, like Popeye, Tom and Jerry, and Rocky and Bullwinkle. But I'm not focused on the shorts, as they helped impact the full-length films that we're going to talk about today, but they do need some love, as without them, there would be a different type of medium for animation. Now, family-friendly doesn't mean it needs to be friendly in any way, but it needs to be subtle to every member of the family. So in animated films, There needs to be something for every family member in the film so they can relate to it. I'm going to use a more recent anime film for this, at least one that was nominated for the Academy Awards, to fully explain what I'm talking about here. Originally, I was going to use The Wild Robot as it was my favorite anime film in 2024, and I really connected with it pretty well. But I think I might have to use Inside Out 2 for this one, as its deep message, but overall its story, might hit better with my main focus here. Now, 2015's Inside Out was a huge animated film when it came out, and years later, many people talk about how much it influenced them. The film was about the emotions that lived in a young girl's head, but its main message was about the importance of integrating all emotions to balance and fulfill a person's life. The film uses sadness and joy as a way to bond them together, telling us, the viewer, that sometimes you need a little bit of sadness to bring in something happy. Yes, it will make you sad, but it's something that can bring you happiness and sadness. Like, say you lost in a game and you are sad that you lost. But then, that one teammate of yours comforts you, and now it brings you happiness because you know you aren't alone, and it leaves you a memory that brings sadness and joy. That itself was very powerful for Pixar. And then 10 years later, they brought out something more powerful, Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 focuses on Riley's emotions once again, but this time it brought in a more mature emotion that many viewers can relate to: anxiety. No, not that anxiety. This anxiety. For kids, anxiety might seem like something adults deal with. But from someone that has had anxiety since he was a kid because he couldn't focus in school during tests and would stress out and worry he would fail because he didn't want to get in trouble with his parents and fail the classes, but also was struggling with ADHD diagnosis, so he had a hard time taking tests in general, to the point where he stuck with him throughout his entire time in school in the years later. I can understand why I related to this movie more than other kids, but that's why they created the character. Anxiety in the film is heavily shown in this film, and we obtain this emotion early on in life, as I explained before about myself. But usually it happens in junior high school or high school, as those are the years where kids begin to find themselves and start to understand who they are. So, how did the animators and storytellers of Inside Out 2 make this film family friendly then? Well, they told this story to kids to teach them the struggles that will come later on in their lives, but also they related to many young adults and even adults and teens that deal with anxiety in their everyday lives. New emotions arrive during our adolescent years, like anxiety, and the usual age demographic to most people, 5 to 12, probably won't understand this topic. But putting it in an animated film will help them understand. But also, it would help the parents of said children, as they may be struggling with anxiety still to this day, and they could relate to the moments in the film, like having a full on panic attack, and the only way to breathe is to have a balance and have a healthy sense of themselves. All of this in a film that to some can be said to be just for kids, but in a way it was perfectly balanced for everyone, as this family friendly animated film did just that. It's a very unique take to use this type of feeling as both a character and a story arc for our other characters, but it balances being a film that is, yes, for kids, but also for families, as everyone can relate or learn something from this animated film. Now, this is something many animated films have done in their films, balancing something mature for its audiences while also being a GPG animated film, as there have been other films like that can be quite family friendly to almost be centered more towards adults. For example, 2020's Soul. Soul was literally aimed more for adults, but it of course needed to be family friendly, so it added in a story and message that could teach children a thing or two. But also it related to the young adults to other adults watching. Toy Story 3 practically was getting older and letting go of your childhood, as we watched Woody say goodbye to Andy, and we also watched Andy say goodbye to Woody and the gang. Then Pixar did it again in 2004 and probably again in 2005. They have to stop making Toy Story films. The entire Shrek franchise literally is about accepting yourself for who you are, as Shrek already accepted himself for who he is, as in the first film, we see deep down he feels alone because everyone is afraid of him. The later films explain accepting yourselves in other ways, but the first Shrek film literally had the story of feeling alone written all over it. And many kids and even adults knew that the story was going to be about this. They knew from watching it because they know that feeling very well. Animators and storytellers all use this unique ways to make an animated film family friendly, and so each member of the family can relate to something and have something for them in said film, whether it's from a very mature joke to a very deep message. At that point, the animated film is not just for kids, but for all. But there are more than just family-friendly animated films as well. Sometimes we have some that are past the PG rating. By the 1950s, animation has become a popular medium in the film genre. Disney continues to bring in their hot streak of films with Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, and Peter Pan. And at this point, other studios began to show their presence in the animation film world. Now, while many of them weren't in the United States, these films still made an impact in their countries they were being showcased in. But one film in 1954 changed how we saw animation. They would become a bit more non-family friendly and a bit more adult rated. Animal Farm, while it was rated G, is considered an adult animated film. Based off the George Orwell novel of the same name, Animal Farm's deep message is about the corruption of power and tyranny. Now, for a film rated G to be about propaganda and corruption of power, well, that isn't something kids would probably understand. But then showcasing it in an animation form and also seeing animals being murdered and animals killing other animals, that definitely doesn't seem rated G. Of course, this focus has now come to the adult side of animated films, as while to our presenters earlier in the 2022 Academy Awards, these animated films are watched by kids. These films I'm going to talk about aren't. In fact, these films aren't subjected for kids, but parents will still let them watch it. Because animation. It's just for kids. This has happened to you or others once or twice because it's an animated movie. There is no harm. It's colorful. So let's put it on the television for them to watch. The first well-known adult animated film, called Fritz the Cat, was an X-rated adult animated film based on the comic strip of the same name. And well, this film had a lot of adult things in it that wasn't just for kids. Smoking, drinking has been seen before in an animated film, as we mentioned earlier, with Pinocchio. But sexual scenes and full-on nudity hasn't. Yes, this film has it all, since why it's an X-rated film. Whoa. Okay, that's... Good lord, we're showing kids this? Now, parents knew probably that this film was not for children, clearly from the poster, but if you didn't know of said character and didn't see the poster, then well, you're in for a surprise. And of course, many years have gone by since Fritz the Cat, and adult animation films have gotten a bit stronger with films like South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights, Beowulf, The Simpsons movie, and everything that was in Sausage Party. They have all included sexual nudity, or murder, or even just very mature rated things that aren't just for
kids. That should not be going inside of a bagel. What the hell? Now, while these are just examples of said adult animated films, none of them can say they were nominated for Best Animated Feature in the Academy Awards. With exception to this one, of course. Anomalisa is the first main adult animated film to be nominated for said award. The film is rated R and is very dramatic as the stop motion film takes us into a psychological journey as we follow this man who is trying to find fulfillment in his life. Now, while it doesn't need sex or murder to be in said film, the film takes a very real approach with how people find their fulfillment in life. Then we have Loving Vincent, a film that is about Vincent van Gogh and what might have happened in his final days. Now, if you didn't know, Van Gogh committed suicide, and this film takes this approach in a very well-mannered way, but it also gives us a beautiful story of a postman who investigates the final days of the painter. Now, there is the most recent nominated adult film, A Memoir of a Snail. The film literally tells a tragic tale of a woman who has gone through many tragic things, including losing her friend, death of a family member, and being fully alone. I learned more about this film while visiting the Museum of the Moving Image, and it is a very tragic animated film that I would love to watch one day. But here's the thing here. While adult animated films have become more self-aware in the last 20 years, and are even being highlighted in an award show over the last 10 to 15 years, there is still a part of the family-friendly films having non-family friendly moments in them. Like losing a parent is terrible to see in many animated films over the years. It started with Bambi, but it gradually continued its way to films like The Lion King, The Land Before Time, Finding Nemo, Tarzan, and so much more. Hell, even death itself plays a huge role in some animated films like Coco with The Land of the Dead and the Mexican culture with the dead, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which pretty much has Puss in Boots running away from death. Then there are tragic moments that happen in films, like seeing Clayton getting killed by a hanging in Tarzan, to Destroyed Village in Mulan. These scenes are more powerful and mature for a young audience, and it's all inside a family-friendly film. Then there are non-family friendly themes in these family-friendly animated films. Hunchback of Notre Dame has multiple dark themes, and I mean Hellfire and the character Claude Frollo are probably problematic as well. He has lust for a woman and almost murders Quasimodo as a baby because he looks hideous. Zootopia literally is a film that has racism in it, something not many children will recognize but can learn just from watching this film.
Up even has a very mature story and a huge moment where we watch Carl live his life with Ellie, but it ultimately ends after she gets sick and passes away. Children have always watched these adult themed moments in these animated films that is centered for kids, but we were just kids. When did when they came out? So when were we supposed to know? We didn't know then what we know now. And what's crazy is once we get older, we will revisit these films and start to relate to them. I think that's the whole point of these stories, why these films have some very mature themes and moments in them. We learn later on when we get older about life, and these films are kind of our introduction to those themes and messages that the storytellers and animators are trying to tell us. Yeah, as a child, we won't get them, but we will understand them fully now. And hey, maybe you do understand them then, but that still proves the point that I made earlier. They relate to everyone in their own way. Sure, we have gotten many adult animated films over the years, but sometimes adult animated films don't have to be just for adults, but rather they are very mature animated films children would watch, like The Boy of the Heroine or Spirited Away. Sometimes they are just animated films that have a deep message and beautiful animation that, yes, is for a general audience, but it is also kind of adult-like with their themes. That doesn't fully make them adult animated, more animated to an extent of being more adult than family friendly. In the 1960s, animation kind of took a downward spiral for film. That's not to say that there weren't any good animated films, but there was a certain boom in adult animation as anime and more mature animated films, as mentioned before, started to get the spotlight. As far as the big companies, the biggest fall from grace was Disney, as at this point they were inside their dark era. Now that's not to say, like I said before, that they didn't push out some good hits. Robin Hood and The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh are some very popular films that they did push out. But at this point, other companies began to show off their talent and be spotlighted, as Disney started to have some stiff competition. Now, this is also during the point of the 70s and 80s, as during the 60s, Disney was kind of lacking with their animation style and their films. Once the 70s and 80s came, they were still in the dark era, but I mean, at this point, studios like Warner Brothers began putting out full-length feature films. As while the quality at the beginning of the films were nowhere near Disney's level, they still began to show off their talent early on. MGM, while it came out with more adult-oriented films for animation, started to spread its full-length animated films more and more. And by the 80s, MGM started to really compete with Disney with films like The Secret of Min, Care Bears movie, and All Dogs Go to Heaven. But one animator got to show off so much so that he really competed with Disney. In fact, he almost was better. The man's name was Don Bluth, as his popularity began to skyrocket, as this animator and filmmaker would come into Disney at one point, but would then depart soon after. And during the 80s, while Disney was going through its comeback era, Bluth was working with other studios and started creating films that would compete with Disney. We already mentioned the two of Secret of Nim and All Dogs Go to Heaven, but then there were other films like An American Tail and The Land Before Time. Disney would finally return to making huge hits in the box office and being heavily critiqued positively by critics, as they entered into their most powerful era, an era where they returned from grace, an era that brought animation to a whole new level, the Renaissance era. From 1989 to 1999, Disney was pushing out hit after hit, as films like The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, and Mulan gave Disney its most spotlighted era, as these films began to finally take a mantle in the biggest stage of them all, the Academy Awards. Of course, the awards at this point that they were being nominated for, and even winning at times, was Best Original Score and Best Original Song. So at this point, yes, they were getting award nominations at the biggest film awards show event ever, but they still weren't getting the respect they truly deserved, as the films I've mentioned for the Renaissance era were all huge box office hits for Disney, and in many cases, the biggest, most popular films of said years to have come out. However, one film in said era did the unthinkable, as for the first time ever, an animated film was nominated for Best Picture. In the 1992 ceremonies, the Best Picture Award was nominating 5 of the biggest films of the year 1991. Bugsy, JFK, The Prince of Tides, the eventual winner Silence of the Lambs, and our spotlighted animated film, Beauty and the Beast. It lost, yes, but to be recognized and not get a screenplay or best director nomination, but still get into the best picture category, is pretty freaking sweet. But then, why didn't this also happen for The Lion King or Aladdin? They were just as great films with powerful stories, and they did extremely well in the box office and with critics. Clearly they deserve the honor too. Or what about Hunchback of Notre Dame and Mulan? They were more mature Disney animated films that had religion and war included in them, with also some very dark scenes. Why couldn't they get nominated? Well, I have a theory for this, as I believe Hollywood and the Academy didn't respect the medium of animation so well. They respected it enough to honor the film, or at least one film, in the Best Picture category of Beauty and the Beast. But why did it take 64 years to do so? I think it's because, to the Academy and to the Hollywood, animation is
just for kids. It isn't a genre of film that will get honored so much to the point where it needs to be honored in the award ceremonies. Or maybe they thought they were an afterthought, as while yes, Walt Disney was honored in the Academy Awards heavily in the early years, as he's tied with Sean Baker with the most awards in one night, it wasn't enough to justify animated films needing to be honored by the Academy. But some of these animated films, not being heavily honored, and with more heavy-hitting awards, were successful in the box office for critics, something needed to be changed and happen, as we have more competition rolling out, as DreamWorks and Pixar began its journey and were putting out some great films. Especially Pixar, as they started the computer animated trend that would later change the way animated films were created. Not only that, but their first feature film, Toy Story, not only was nominated for Best Original Song and Best Original Score, something that animated films were very known for at that point, it became the first animated film nominated for a screenplay category. Like that's insane. To know that your animated film, your first animated film, was nominated for a screenplay category, an animated film being nominated for a category where big Hollywood films are being nominated, or live action, is insane. But something needed to happen. Something needed to be done. So the Academy made that change. And in 2001, a new category was created that would spotlight the best animated films of said year.
It is 2001. The Academy just announced their brand new category for animation, Best Animated Feature. Not only was this a huge peak for animation, but it was the beginning of the competing years for animation. By 2001, a whole bunch of studios were pushing out bangers. Okay, these first few aren't going to be like bangers, but like when I was like 6, they were bangers to me. So shut up and eat your popcorn. Disney was in the beginning of their second decline in box office revenue, but they pushed out an underrated film called Atlantis: The Lost Empire. And while it didn't do so well in the box office, it gained a cult following and was heavily praised by critics. Warner Brothers brought us Osmosis Jones, a film that would later spawn a television series. The film was a box office flop, however it also gained a cult following. A Japan studio called OLM Inc. gave us Pokemon Forever. It was the fourth full-length feature film for Pokemon, and while it didn't do well in the box office or with critics, it still was loved by Pokemon fans. Walt Disney Pictures brought us another film with Recess School's Out, and it performed well in the box office. And at the same time, Warner Brothers was pushing out straight-to-VHS full-length feature film that was heavily beloved called Scooby-Doo and Cyber Chase. Yeah, freaking film is peak, alright? Come at me, bro. Studio Ghibli gave us one of the greatest animated films ever that would then win Best Animated Feature in 2003 after it was released in the United States, Spirited Away. But our main 3 films to be nominated for the very first Best Animated Feature were the following: Nickelodeon's Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, Pixar's Monsters Inc., and DreamWorks' Shrek. While Nickelodeon wasn't the hugest threat in the film industry, especially in the animation film industry, they still pushed out some great films and would eventually win in 2011 with the film Rango. But the two huge competing companies next to Disney, Warner Brothers, and in 2002 a new company called Blue Sky, were Pixar and DreamWorks. At this point, both studios decided to mainly focus on 3D computer animation for their films, as while Pixar did it first with Toy Story, DreamWorks would change the style of animation, as while they dipped their toes in it with the film Ants, Shrek was the reasoning why most studios began to make their films with computer animation. As while Pixar started it with Toy Story, DreamWorks popularized it with Shrek. Shrek would also win Best Animated Feature in 2002, becoming the first animated film to win this award in this category. But this was just the beginning of the competition, as from there, Every year or so, it felt like Hollywood and even huge studios were pushing out a new animated film, and some of the biggest animated films of all time came out during these competing years. Pixar had their own Renaissance era as they were pushing out hit after hit, including Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, and Up. It's also worth noting that Pixar's Up and Toy Story 3 would become the second and third animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. I will circle back to this moment in a bit, but it's incredible to see how huge of a moment this was for animation, as while Pixar was cooking with its best years, DreamWorks was also cooking out a decade full of heavy hitters. Shrek 2, Over the Hedge, Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and Kung Fu Panda led a pretty decent 2000s for DreamWorks. Disney, on the other hand, was struggling finding its audience. While they did push out some good films like Lilo and Stitch, Treasure Planet, and The Princess and the Frog, they weren't doing so well in the box office with some of their films, and it started to show as they were heading towards computer animation. As while The Princess and the Frog became their last ever hand-drawn animated film, Chicken Little became their first ever computer animated film, and it was around this time they bought out Pixar and started a huge partnership together that has gotten stronger even today. Blue Sky was created in 2002, and their first film needed to be a big bang to compete with Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks. And thankfully, their first film, Ice Age, was a smash hit, so much so that it was nominated for the Academy Award in 2003. While it never was on the same level as the big three of animated studios, it too used computer animation for all of its films, thanks to the success of DreamWorks' Shrek and Pixar. While the big competition was between Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks, Blue Sky, Warner Brothers, and every other studio creating animated films were doing everything upon anything to get their stories out. But from 2003 to 2010, DreamWorks and Pixar took over the animation category in the Oscars. For the first time ever, animated films were getting more recognition. The competition we were seeing in Hollywood was proving itself as something to recognize in multiple different categories, from original score, original song, to sound editing and screenplay. There was a time where animated films were being valued and recognized. Again, it wasn't Best Picture, but it was great to see animated films get the appreciation. Of course, it was mostly Pixar films at that span of the years to get the biggest award nomination mentioned before, as Up and Toy Story 3 both got nominated for Best Picture in 2009 and 2010. It was something insane to see, as the Academy knew how there was an increase in animated films and how great a percentage of them would do each year. That, and there were a lot of live action films that would do so incredible that the Academy needed to update their amount of nominations from 5 to 10. So yes, there may have been a reason why both films were nominated, but let's look a little bit deeper onto this. In 2010, Up was nominated with 9 other films, and it became the second animated film, first for Pixar and second for Disney, to be nominated for Best Picture. Precious, Avatar, A Serious Man, Up in the Air, An Education, Inglourious Basterds, District 9, The Blind Side, and the eventual winner, The Hurt Locker, were all nominated next to Up. And for Up to even be nominated with such strong contenders is astonishing to think about. I mean, after almost 20 years for an animated film to be nominated again, even though there were more popular, bigger films that were literally heavily praised to not even get nominated for this award. And I'm talking about like some big films. The Lion King, WALL-E, Ratatouille, Mulan, Aladdin, The Prince of Egypt. Hell, even Shrek itself was huge at the time. And it didn't even get nominated for Best Picture. All these animated films were not nominated since Beauty and the Beast was nominated. But to think we finally saw it happen again. While it didn't win, it still has to be an honor to be recognized. And for animation, while it's something special, as it's finally felt like the medium was getting recognition, to not be seen as second fiddle to live action films, animation was finally being recognized in the Academy. At that time, and even now, we are seeing animated films become the highest grossing films in the box office, to even the highly praised films by critics. Hell, even some of the best films of all time can't touch some of the animated films I've mentioned prior, because while they were marketed towards kids, teenagers, and adults were the huge demographic to go to the theater and watch them. It's brilliant to see animation as a whole get its love and value so much by Hollywood in 2010 that in 2011 they did it again with 2010's Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 might be one of the greatest animated films of all time. At the time of its nomination, it was the highest grossing film of 2010 and fourth greatest of all time, bringing it over $1 billion in the box office. And the crazy part is, out of the 10 highest grossing films of 2010, 5 of them were animated. Animated films were competing heavily that year, and it showed with the box office revenue they all brought in for the studios that they were under, to them being heavily praised by critics. But for Toy Story 3 to be nominated for Best Picture and somehow still lose is crazy. Even when I was shocked when I saw it lost. And of all the films it lost to, it had to be The King's Speech, of course. Films like Inception, The Social Network, Black Swan were probably the only competing films against Toy Story 3. They too lost to a forgotten film, and yet that was also the last time animation was nominated for Best Picture, as they became a forgotten medium for a while in the Academy Awards. Now, by the 2010s, animation was as strong as they ever were before. Every studio was pushing out so much films, some good, some not so good. Cars 2, an Emoji Movie, just to name a couple. And they were just dominating the box office, even if they were good or bad. And the good films that did come out, that were getting heavily praised by critics, did get a couple of nominations with visual effects and even Best Original Score. Not, something you want to see, but, at this point, there was a decline for animation in the Academy Awards that they kind of just felt like a prize when they were nominated for more than just their own category. I mean, we are talking about films like The Lego Movie, which didn't even get nominated for Best Animated Feature and still is a crime to this day. A film that had a very unique screenplay, and the direction for this film was amazing. Or, I'll be the one to say it, Frozen, a film that beat out Toy Story's all-time grossing animated films record in just 2 years, of the film just taking the spot from Lion King. It couldn't even obtain Best Picture or Screenplay. It only could obtain Original Song. Now, while I'm not a fan of it, I will say it should have gotten at least some love for the musical score at least. I could even say How to Train Your Dragon franchise got zero recognition in any category other than Best Animated Feature. Hell, Into the Spider-Verse, one of the greatest animated films of the 2010s and possibly of all time, couldn't even get a single award nomination other than Best Animated Feature. It could have get more recognition, which is crazy because it used multiple different animation styles in said films, so editing or even screenplay could have been something it could have got recognized for or nominated for, and yet it didn't. And I know I've been taking this off like a freaking broken record, but Best Song, Best Original Score, no nomination for Into the Spider-Verse for that. Insane. Very insane. There was a time where animation was actually making strides in the Academy Awards, as it was getting more nominations than just Best Animated Feature. Of the 611 films that have been nominated for Best Picture since the Academy Awards first started, only 0.004909836% of said films were even animated, meaning it barely has 1% of nominations ever. And yes, I did the actual math to show that not only has there been only 3 of the 611 films that were nominated for Best Picture that were animated, but the main reason is to show how there have been a decline of representation in Academy Awards for animation. And honestly, I think it's because the medium as a whole isn't valued well enough by the Academy or even Hollywood. Now, within the last 5 years, going into this year, only 4 animated films have been nominated for other awards other than Best Animated Feature, Original Score, or Original Song. And I'm not including score or song because while it is great honor for these films, it's more the song and people involved with the song that is being nominated. And that same goes with the score. The 4 films that were nominated for other more slightly bigger nominations were Soul for Best Sound, Flea for Best Documentary and Best International Film, Flow for Best International Film, and The Wild Robot for Best Sound. That's it. That's all the representation these 4 films were worth. Now, I'm not going to drag these films down, as they are some very impressive categories to be nominated for, and it's an honor. But why can't we see the issue at hand? Animation is not just valued by the Academy, but Hollywood itself, as while yes, the Academy decides the films and people that will get nominated, the studios and people of Hollywood are also to blame. Producers and distributors must submit these films to the Academy so they could even be voted in to be nominated for the Oscars. Of course, there is some eligibility for said submissions, but 9 out of 10 times, it's a go to submit. So when it comes for animated films, why aren't more films being submitted each year? And if they have been submitted, why aren't they being chosen for the main nominations? I could be crazy to say all this, but honestly, it's both our fault, but also Hollywood just doesn't respect animation anymore, and we don't either. We automatically see them as films to put on the screen for kids to be distracted, or films that we bring just for kids to go enjoy because it's not like any other age demographic is going to care to watch them, even though that has been factually proven the opposite. It is at this time that I now have to fuse both my focuses together and say that we are still in a time where animation is barely represented in the Academy. But we, the people that watch the films of animation, the people that go to the theater with their children to see the next big animated films of the big studios, we are just as big of the problem as the Academy. My main argument started because the 3 presenters for the Best Animated Feature back in 2022 flat out said, kids watch these films over and over again. And that pretty much is saying these films are mainly only watched for kids and not adults. And the society we live in today will just see animation as a kids genre. So much so that even the Academy doesn't show it enough love. And I mean, after all that I said, you would think the viewer that's hearing this doesn't show it enough love and doesn't see animation as just a kid's genre. But why does this happen to animation? After all, there are adult-oriented animated films that have been out there, and even some animated films that do come out that are rated PG often, that have some mature moments and a very deep, mature message. To be honest with you, I think it's because we don't value the medium as much as we do for live action films, because they constantly have different ratings and they're all centered on different age demographics. Let me use some examples for this, as I'm going to use 3 films with 3 different genres, but also different ratings. First off, we have Joker, a film that is rated R. The film was simply for ages 17 and up, and has very mature scenes not for kids. It's a crime movie, but it's also a comic book movie, but it's mostly a crime movie, and a psychological thriller. Now, Joker is a film that's rated R. Automatically, it's for adults, and we could say that because it's rated R and has very strong language and scenes with both murder and abuse in it, kids won't watch it. But yet, I bet they have. Now let's talk about The Dark Knight, a film that is rated PG-13, but also has some very mature scenes and killing in it too. But there is something different about The Dark Knight compared to the Joker, as The Dark Knight doesn't focus heavily on its mature scenes, and its graphic scenes don't fully show the kills in the scenes thanks to the camera work of the director. So automatically, it can use the PG-13 rating and can be viewed as ages 13 and up. That's not to say that kids won't watch this either, because it's a Batman film that they must be with a parent, or at least with someone with an age range of 13 to 17 to watch said film. Now we have a family-friendly comic book movie called Superman, a film that was rated PG and has violence in it and some mild mature scenes, but yet it wasn't too mature for it to be rated anywhere higher than PG. Kids are able to see this film even though it has some mild mature scenes in it. Now these three films are comic book live action films, so let's use this type of scenario with different ratings but with animated films. Let's start with PG animated films. For this purpose, I will use The Incredibles, a superhero animated film that has violence and some mild, mature moments, but it also has a very violent death scene in it that is partially seen in the film, but yet is rated PG. Then we have The Simpsons movie, a film that is rated PG-13, but was still viewed by many children, as The Simpsons is an adult animated show on Fox that is watched not just by adults, but by many families. So the film, to have some adult mature scenes and violence in it, is still being viewed by kids, then I guess it's no harm. What about an R-rated animated film? There's no way children would be allowed to watch an R-rated film. Batman the Killing Joke, an animated Batman film that has very graphic scenes and a ton of mature moments in the film that shouldn't be viewed by children. And yet, the film is available at this time on Max. So yes, children have a way to watch the film, but also it's a Batman animated film, so parents would automatically put it on for their children, despite it having an R rating. And why is that? After all, it is R rated, so clearly parents should know that, right? Well, each film we have said here all have one thing in common: animation, but also violence. And the big main focus here and common thing in general is parents don't seem to care because it's animation. So clearly it's not a big deal to pop on the screen to distract the kids because it's a genre mainly centered for, I think we're all paying attention here, kids. But clearly that isn't the case, as The Simpsons and The Batman Killing Joke are both animated films and are clearly not just for kids. You see, there's the problem here. Many people see animation as just for kids, or they would even say, "Aren't you too old to be watching this movie?" when an adult is watching an animated film because it's animated. Yes, I've been there. I still have done that. Moving on. And this honestly grinds my gears because on paper, yes, animation seems like it's a children's genre for film, but it's actually not, as many adults find this genre to be soothing to their mental state and even relate to some of the animated films I have mentioned earlier on. Films like Inside Out or Soul or Shrek have used mature themes and messages that a child wouldn't fully understand until they fully develop into their own maturity level. Once they reach said level, like say teenage years or even adult years, they'll finally be able to understand that. I'll even use a film that is directly aimed towards children but has a very adult theme in its story. By now, many of you have seen the film Lilo and Stitch, and while why wouldn't you? It's one of the more beloved Disney films ever. But what adult theme are we talking about in this film? About a blue alien life form who befriends a young girl in Hawaii. Well, have you ever felt alone and not loved by others? In Lilo and Stitch, both characters parallel to one another, as Lilo is a weird girl who is fixated on random things that not many kids in her hula school like. She's an oddball out of the bunch, and it's not just in school but at home. Now this is not saying that Lilo is not loved by her sister, but she is also getting into fights with her, mainly because Lilo is different. And with knowing that this little bit of information, you can now see that she is alone with how she feels with life. Yeah, her sister tries to bond with her and understand her, but It's not as easy as one would think it would be. But then we have Stitch. And his side is not like Lilo's, but more complex. You see, Stitch, yes, you. Talking about my movie? Oh, God, we do this all the time in these videos. Yes, Stitch. I'm talking about your movie. Can I talk about it? Sure. Thank you. You see, I'm not from Earth, so automatically, I am very well the oddball out. But I was created to be like a little monster. And I don't understand myself. I don't understand why I do the things I do. So I kind of level with Lilo, as we both are alone in this world until we find each other. And yeah. Damn, Stitch, that... Whoa, that kind of got me a little bit. But, there's one thing you are missing, though. You see, Stitch is more complex than Lilo, as we just stated. But Lilo has trauma in her life, as she lost both her parents. So, her reasoning of being the way she is comes from psychological side of grieving, and to cope, she uses can't say this word, Stitch, help. Fixations, thank you. Weird fixations to find joy. And for me, there's no trauma in my life, as, well, I'm an experiment who doesn't understand the world, so living in the world that I'm in, I don't understand anything, really. That's right. Even when he and Lilo are together, we see that she doesn't fully understand why he is the way he is, ultimately making Stitch more alone than she is, as while there is love and understanding in their relationship, Stitch can't just explain his ways of being himself, as he doesn't understand how to express it, which is why he is very alone. Yeah. Thank you for understanding me. You're welcome. The theme of being alone and feeling alone is a very adult theme for kids movie, as kids in the age range that this is centered around won't fully understand the psychological side of this theme until they're quite older. But why does this example correlate to what I've mentioned before? Well, Lilo and Stitch also has a lot of violence, from guns being used to Stitch causing havoc in some scenes, but the way violence is shown here is more kid-friendly. However, I never call this film a kid's film, as while yes, the age range is, let's say, 4 to 10, I can't argue that this film is for everyone, but us as a society call this film a kid's film because it's Disney and it's animated and has a very cute little furball character that will work well for toys and merchandise for kids, even though I see a lot of adults wearing Stitch ears and apparel in Disney World more than I see the children wearing it. I am one of them. So, is this animated film a just for kids film? I don't think so. The Academy didn't care who the film was for, as they still nominated for the second ever Best Animated Feature category in the Academy Awards, and it lost to Spirited Away, an animated film that has a lot more mature themes that was all under the same umbrella here as just for kids. Maybe I'm crazy, but since the Academy made this category for animated films, I feel like these animated films have only been just subjected to being under this category. And that itself isn't fully true, as yes, they have gotten other big nominations, including the biggest of them all, the Best Picture. But is it me, or does the Academy not value animated films enough? Think about it. Out of all the things we have talked about here, only 3 animated films have been nominated for Best Picture, and yet I can name so many more that I probably have named already, so I'm going to sound like a broken record, that truly deserve to be up there in the Best Picture category. The Lion King, one of my favorite animated films ever, is an instant classic that I truly love and will always be biased for, and I truly think it should have been nominated for Best Picture in 1995. WALL-E in 2008 could have been nominated, as it was one of the most highest rated films of said year and had one of the biggest box office numbers in said year, and yet it only could claim Best Animated Feature. But it also was nominated for Best Screenplay, a category that is huge in the Academy Awards, but yet it didn't get nominated for Best Picture. Call me crazy, but I would even nominate Shrek for Best Picture, as at the time it was a cultural phenomenon and made history for animation. But yet it didn't get nominated for Best Picture. It too was nominated for Best Screenplay, for fuck's sakes. And yes, the Academy decided not to nominate the Best Animated Film of said year. Actually, let's list every animated film on here to get nominated for Best Original or Adapted Screenplay. Toy Story, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, Inside Out, Shrek, Toy Story 3. Only 2 of the 9 films were nominated for Best Picture. So, you see how the Academy values animation? It gives you that big shock to be nominated for Best Screenplay category, but that's as far as it will go, as you will have to be a huge animated film of said year to pull out heartstrings to even be nominated, like both Up and Toy Story 3 did so. So, why is it that we still consider them children's movies? After all, Up is about an old man who is alone in this world and goes on his journey. But in reality, he's alone because of one thing he loved, his wife Ellie, died, and he no longer lives life like everyone else, as the biggest part of that life was brought him joy, love, and happiness was taken away from him. How's that just for kids? Then you have Toy Story 3, a film about Woody and the gang needing to say goodbye to their owner Andy as he's getting ready to go to college. In this case, the toys represent us as we say goodbye to either our childhood or that special someone we care about, and Andy being that childhood or someone we love, and Woody being the heart and soul of the film. We parallel with him as we grew up with the gang and the toys, so we now need to say goodbye and live with our lives to adulthood. Both of these films have mature themes, and both films were nominated for Best Category, and yet, since Toy Story 3's nomination back in 2011, no other animated film has been given the respect it deserves and been nominated for Best Picture. Films like Inside Out, Anomalisa, Coco, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Soul, Encanto, Flea, The Boy and Heroine, and The Wild Robot, all these films with some mature moments and themes were all not nominated for Best Picture. Even before the Best Animated Feature existed. I mentioned Lion King. What about the very first full-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or other films like The Prince of Egypt, Fantasia, Sleeping Beauty, Mulan, Aladdin? Why couldn't they all get nominated? They were all huge animated films, had some very mature moments and themes. Clearly, the Academy will love to feature them in the category. Nope! The Academy doesn't see value in animation. As while, yes, lately they have seen 1 or 2 animated films get some love, it's not enough. Why can't an animated film be nominated for Best Director? Why hasn't one single animated film won a Screenplay Award? Better question is, why hasn't a single animation film been nominated for Best Picture and win? The answer? The Academy doesn't value animated films because they aren't real. I see animation as more than just a motion picture consisting of a sequence of drawings, each slightly different so that when filmed and run through a projector, the figure seems to move. I see that as more than that. But that's why I think the Academy and the Society doesn't value animated films, because they are fictional characters we are watching in an animated form. Something that is neither real nor a living thing. But I kind of find that to be a half-assed way of seeing things, as you could watch a live-action film of fictional characters like Batman or the Avengers or Star Wars, and while yes, they're a living thing, they themselves aren't real. So, they're based off comic book characters, which is another form of animation. Well, Star Wars wasn't, but it has since become. You get my point. I could take this to a whole new level, as I could even bring up some anime films or comics that become live-action films like Death Note or Scott Pilgrim, and how they too are fictional characters that are living things but aren't real, as they too are based off of fictional animated characters. Let's get even deeper than that, and we're going to use live action films of animated films. Disney is pretty well known for these type of things lately, so films like Aladdin or Mulan, or most recently Lilo and Stitch, fictional characters that are living things but are not real. Are we seeing a pattern here? Films based off of real people or based on true stories could also even be in this factor, as not every character in said film could be based off of a real life person, and can as well make them a fictional character. Live action movies aren't fully real themselves, and yet we value them more than animated films. The Academy values them more than animated films, but yet, if my argument can be used again, how can films like Avatar or The Black Panther or even Wicked get nominated and valued so much even though they aren't real films? But films like The Wild Robot, Flow, or Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse can't be nominated. It's clearly become more well known here that I have rested my case here, that the half-assed answer I said earlier about animation not being real, but live action is just been revoked as live action films to a very certain extent, aren't real too. As how do we conclude the whole argument, and how do I get you all to see my side of things? You can honestly love animation or hate it. However you feel about the genre is how you feel. But at the end of the day, we should all appreciate the medium as a whole, as while the films themselves may seem like they are just for kids, they're for everyone. And I know I'm saying that not every animated film is just for kids. I know that these movies are basically for children. They really aren't. But the other thing here is that I think it's time for us as a society and even the Academy to start valuing it more, as they're running toe-to-toe with live-action films in the box office, and even critically, a lot of animated films are critiqued better than live-action film, and it's more complex to critique, but they have high-rated percentage on Rotten Tomatoes, or even in other film review websites, including Letterboxd. Now, I'm not saying every animated film needs to be valued and appreciated for the awards season, but they should get more appreciation in general, as they can leave an impact with us just as much as live action films can. After all, a lot of live action films have left an impact with me in my lifetime. Animated films that I have loved kind of impacted me a bit more. Now, I'm not saying everyone's gonna be like this or feel like this way, but I know I am not alone. But the reason why I have this feeling and why this has been like a huge thing for me to talk about is actually pretty understandable. You see, back when I was in college and learning more about film, I kind of asked myself which films impacted me in my life the most, to the point where I had such a bond with them. The few films that came to my mind were The Dark Knight, obviously because it's my favorite film of all time. But then I thought about Lion King, Toy Story, and Aladdin. Aladdin was more because of Robin Williams, but Lion King and Toy Story were my childhood favorites, but also they left an impact with me because of their hidden messages. Toy Story is more complex than Lion King, but being loyalty, change, and fear of being alone, some hidden messages in Toy Story that I took in as my biggest fear is being alone, and I'm a very loyal person to people I care about, so automatically I really value this film the older I got. But the complex side comes from the change, as well, as we all go through change in life, but change can only happen when the person makes that change rather than it happening on its own. And I won't lie, early on in life I had a hard time with change, and eventually I grew out of it, but I honestly think Toy Story taught me that lesson, as I grew up with the next two films and learned that change was a big part of those films, and I myself began to accept change and was ready to keep moving forward. But in order to move forward, you need to stop worrying about the past, which takes us to Lion King. Lion King's hidden message about learning from your past really hit me hard and stuck with me in my lifetime. I used to quote Rafiki said in my high school yearbook, but it honestly stuck with me ever since. Not to mention, and make this even darker, but like Simba, I also don't have a father anymore, as he watches over me as I grow older. But I feel like a lot of people can say this, but this leads to my point though. Animation films aren't just for kids. I learned more from animated films than I did from watching live action films when I got older. Even the ones I grew up on, I started to learn more and more on the dark themes and messages some have, to the very mature themes and messages that are hidden inside of them. More importantly, I think adults go to see animated films more than children do, as they do bring their kids to see them, and some may say it's to distract them for a couple hours. I think they are secretly going to not only relive their youth, but because there's something powerful in the film that they too can value and appreciate it. It's not like it's for every animated film, but you will know the ones that they are when you watch a trailer or read about the plot before seeing the film. This is also why I think the Academy should really give animation more value and appreciation too, as because like live action films, animated films have something to say and really leave an impact with many people. Yeah, it's hard to talk about the acting because it's practically just voice acting, but why can't we give it an award out? Or why can't we give that award out? Or why can't we also have a director for animated film not be nominated? It's not like they aren't doing anything that like live action directors are doing, but their job is to direct the film, just with animation. Hell, I think more screenplay nominations should need to be given to animation, because there's a whole lot of animated films that have recently come out the last 10 years that have great screenplays, and honestly, some could even win the award. The Academy needs to stop being so old school with film and embrace animation as a whole, as there are so many animated films that were honestly better than half the films that came out in said years that were nominated. And I'm not saying that to prove a point, it's a simple fact. But because there are animated and a medium just for kids, the Academy see it as that really, and sugarcoat them with little awards that, yes, it is great to be nominated for, but it's meaningless unless you actually see the film and then you see how well the film was developed in multiple categories for the Academy and how they should get some sort of recognition. I know I sound like a broken record or a VHS tape that's stuck on a certain part of the film reel, but we need to truly value the medium of animation so much more. In the end of the day, animation is more than just for kids. They are films that bring joy to all. A genre of film that can take the ease off of many people. A genre of film that can be more adult than it being kid friendly. A genre of film that has been used by many directors to show a traumatic moment in their life, to teaching young ones and even young adults about a very mature lesson. But most of all, they were most likely our first introduction to film, and later our introduction to our children's introduction to film. As well, yes, we were introduced to it as kids. We grew old with them, and they become no longer just for kid films, but just regular film for all. The whole purpose of this was to gradually connect everyone to animated films. Some connect with them in very nostalgic ways, others will connect with the film's story and message. I was very passionate about talking about this, as it was something that grasped my mind for a long time. The whole idea of animation really inspired me to go in depth with what I believe is the greatest genre of film, as you can do whatever you want in animated films. That can be said with live action films, but there needs to be some sort of reality in them, even if they are films about ghost possessions or superheroes, pretty much anything that can't happen in real life. They still have boundaries in these films. And that's why in animation, those boundaries can be a bit broken. to the point where anything is possible. And that's why I love animated films and why I hope this reaches the right people. The people that have the same feeling and want to see animation get the appreciation and value it deserves. And that includes in the Academy Awards and many other award shows that doesn't give it the respect it truly needs. I honor this piece to all that has brought animation to life and told many stories in their own way and gave the medium itself the respect and helped give it the path to become one of the greatest genres of film in the world.
And so our journey comes to an end, but yours continues on. Grab hold of your dreams and make them come true. For you are the key to unlocking your own magic. Now go, let your dreams guide you. Reach out and find your happily ever after.
The battles, the stories, the losses and all the glory.
We're changed by the way we live every day. Just look up and reach to the sky.
We all have the courage to fly.